Lesson 11. This is going to be the last lesson of World War II. 10.5, yes. So we're going to explain the fighting styles and new technological advances that occurred during World War II. All right, so we have a number of key terms that are on here, but they're good words for you to just make sure you know. They're more likely to pop up in readings about World War II, so I want to make sure you're familiar with them. So counterattack. It's an attack made in response to an enemy's attack. This prefix counter tells you that it's kind of like going back. You're going back towards something. Kamikaze attacks or suicide attacks. These are only really associated with Japan. Casualties, a person killed or injured in a war accident. D-Day is June 6, 1944, and it is the day the Allied forces invaded France to free it from Nazi rule and eventually defeat Germany in World War I. This is the turning point of the war. VE Day is the victory in Europe, so it's the day that World War II ends in Europe. VJ Day is the victory over Japan, and it's the day the war ends in the Pacific. The atomic bomb, this is extremely important, as well as this last one, is a bomb that derives its destructive power from a rapid release of nuclear energy by fission and of heavy atomic nuclei, causing damage through heat blast and radioactivity. The United Nations is an organization aiming to maintain international peace and security. The United Nations is going to replace the League of Nations. So these are the two sides of the war. You have the Allies, the United States, Britain, and France. The USSR is going to join in 1941 when Hitler breaks the non-aggression pact. And then you have the Axis, Germany, Italy, Japan, and then you have a few other countries on both sides. One of the things that I want you to point out with the Allies, Australia, Brazil, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, these are all colonies sending soldiers to fight. I believe they're all actually, except for Brazil, they're all British colonies specifically. Okay, so let's make sure that we remember. So Germany is going to be Hitler. Italy is going to be Mussolini. Japan is Hirohito. I might be spelling that wrong. I apologize. The United States is going to start with FDR, but eventually at the end of the war, towards the end of the war, it's going to be Truman. Britain is going to be Churchill. And then France, no one cares because they got taken over. They didn't really have a leader. All right, so you're going to take a look at these two deaths, and then you're going to answer these two questions. Hint, hint, I might have already told you one of the answers. All right, so the invasion of Normandy, or D-Day. So it is in June 6th, 1944, Germany, France, or Normandy, France. Allied planes overhead and warships offshore providing covering fire while landing crafts delivered 50,000 soldiers and 1,500 tanks to 5 Normandy beaches. German forces with well-entrenched guns put up a fierce resistance, but by the end of the day, 150,000 Allied troops had come ashore and controlled a 59-mile section of the Normandy coast. What you need to understand about the beaches of Normandy is that you had like this like flat land where the water was coming in, and then you had these huge like dunes, these huge like almost like mountains that were kind of popping up, and the Germans were up here. So what they had to do in their boats is they'd had to come off, all right? They had to come off and they had to get into the water and then run and try to go up while the Germans are shooting at them the whole way down. So that's why you ended up with so many that died on the beach of Normandy. But if you take a look at the map, you see that so many of them landed, and then once they were able to land, it was from there that they're able to liberate France, they're able to liberate Belgium, and they're able to go into Germany. So there was the Yalta Conference. So here we have Churchill, here we have FDR, and here we have Stalin. All right, so these are our big three. And it was in February of 1945. And what they basically needed to do is they were trying to figure out what are we going to do with Germany. And so they agreed to require Germany's unconditional surrender. No one in Germany's power was able to like say that they were not going to surrender. Everyone had to surrender, like it had to be unconditional. And then what they were going to do was they were going to divide, that's what this section means, divide Germany into four, one for each group, and they tossed a section to France. And the reason they did this was they basically were like, listen, we tried to give you the chance in World War I to get yourselves together, and you elected Hitler. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just follow you and keep you in charge and watch you so that you can't take it over again. In April 30th, 1945, Hitler kills himself. He kills himself with a shot to his head while his wife takes a cyanide pill. So he shoots himself in his head. His wife takes cyanide pill. I believe he also takes a cyanide pill. And sad to say, they also actually end up killing their dog. So May 8th is VE Day. He kills himself at the end of April. It only takes a few more days before Germany officially surrenders. Italy surrendered after Mussolini abandoned them. So basically, Mussolini, when the Allies come through Africa and get into Italy and start moving up to Italy, Mussolini like takes off. He's like deuces and like leaves, and the rest of Italy just crumbles. So they surrender to the Allies. Mussolini is captured in his attempt to escape to Switzerland, and Mussolini is executed on April 28th, 1945, and their bodies were actually hung on display. And spit on and torn up and things thrown out. I think they like hung him even like upside down. Yeah, they really went after him. So we have three big effects of the war. The United Nations was created to help with international conflict and negotiating peace. It was supposed to be better than the old League of Nations. It was supposed to, it does have a couple things in it, which we'll learn more about when we get into human rights violations. It has its own military. The United States is an active member, etc. It's adopted and signed into being in 1945. It has a couple key objectives, okay? Respecting the principles of equal rights and self-determination. So self-determination is the right for a country to choose its own government. And then international cooperation in solving economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian problems around the world. So what happens to Germany? After the Potsdam Conference, the Allies divided the occupation zone of Germany. So it's divided into four military occupation zones: France in the southwest, Britain in the northwest, United States in the south, the Soviet Union in the east. Eventually, this is going to become known as West Germany. And this is going to become known as East Germany. And it will remain this way, and it stays split. Oh my God, I can't spell today, guys, sorry. Until 1990. And then finally, Japan. So after the defeat of Japan in World War II, the United States led the Allies in the occupation and rehabilitation of the Japanese state. Between 1945 and 1952, the United States occupying forces led by General Douglas A. MacArthur enacted widespread military, political, and economic and social reforms. And Japan is finally convinced to surrender after the dropping of 2 atomic bombs.